So welcome everybody. Today is April 13th at 1:48 p.m. This is the Finance Committee meeting for the month of April. We decided to make it a little bit early to accommodate some changes to an earlier board meeting. So I'd like to review all the financials to prepare for the board meeting next week. Like right now, do a roll call, and if you could say present. So Glenn Rogers.
Here.
Doug Hewson.
As well.
And Peter Shi.
I'm here.
Perfect. All are present. Ethan is here as well. At this time, I'd like to ask for any public comments. Mary Beth, I'm unable for some reason to copy and paste that link on the PDF onto my browser. Are there any public comments on the form before we open up to those who are on the call today? Mary Beth, are there any public comments on that Excel sheet?
Sorry, no, there wasn't any. Go ahead with the public comments.
So I'd like to open up for any public comments, those who are on the call. If you can, please unmute yourself and state your name and 3 minutes. I just want to make sure everybody's is able to unmute themselves. Is that correct?
They're able to.
Okay. Looks like somebody else is joining. We'll give them another minute or so. Okay, so at this time, the public comments is closed. Mary Beth, I was looking through the agenda and I realized important component to our agenda, because we do still need to adhere to Brown's Act, which is the Pledge of Allegiance, which is take this from a remote location last week, extremely more remote. So it's very difficult to access it. At this time, I'd like to I believe there is no closed session, so I believe at this time I'd like to go through the Pledge of Allegiance. So I will recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and those who like can follow me. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Life, liberty.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask to review and to approve the last meeting minutes.
Ethan?
I'll second that.
Who motioned?
I did, and then Doug seconded it. Ethan?
Wonderful. At this time, I'd like to do roll call. Glenn?
Aye, yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Peter?
Aye.
Ethan, aye. Also like to approve the next meeting's procedures. Did anybody have anything to say? Oh, excuse me. Wonderful. Is to vote to approve a meeting by abbreviated teleconferencing procedure for another 30 days according to Assembly Bill 361 and Government Code 54953 E1. At this time, I'd like to, Doug, are you about to say something?
Yeah, we can move on that and then just a moment to invite any public comments on that motion.
Thank you.
And as a board member too, I've got just one comment on it, but we can do motion before and then take comments either way. We're not stuck. You have a preference on comments before or motion prior?
Let's have public comments before. At this time, I'd like to open up for any public comments before the committee makes a decision. So you have we'll have it for 20 minutes and 2 minutes per person. At this time, please unmute yourself and you're welcome to make a statement regarding this action item. There are no public comments. Doug, you're about to say something? Do one more.
Yeah, so in discussion on the item, there's a little tension that we're managing. So I like having this provision so that we can have more people participate, especially in a meeting like this in the middle of the day. People don't have to leave their workplace, their home to come to the office. There's an advantage to being together in person, but I think for these finance committee meetings, if the committee members don't mind, this is very, very convenient. And if the public and parents that want to participate, if this makes it easier for them, that's why we're making this provision and extending it. Our regular board meetings are in person right now, and I've noticed a drop off in ability to participate. But I like at this season for the bigger meetings or for the regular meeting, everybody in person that can be. It fosters a little more teamwork. So glad you're making that. I'm happy to make the motion to extend another 30 days the provision.
Wonderful. And by the way, one other comment is this is quite an unusual time. Normally, we do normally after hours, but given there are some scheduling conflicts, we wanted to ensure the board meeting was on, it was done on a timely basis. And so it's been pushed up, and as a result, we needed to adjust today's finance committee meeting. So, but thank you those who are all attending. At this time, I'd like to call for a motion to approve the next meeting's procedures.
I'll move.
I'll second it.
Wonderful. At this time, I'd like to do a roll call. Doug,
Yes.
Glenn,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Peter,
Aye.
Ethan says aye. All has passed. The next item is that an update from our interim executive director, Dr. Edward Watson. Dr. Watson.
He should be here. I can check with him.
Okay.
He's coming.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I really had to use the restroom. What do you need?
Oh, you're the update.
Oh, it's the update time? Okay.
Yes.
I didn't know we were there yet. Okay, I thought there would still be a little more conversation. So I figured this is a quick time I could go use the restroom. My update for the finance committee is going to be relatively brief. I'll probably have a longer one for Tuesday's general board meeting. But just, we're looking to try and, first thing we're looking to try and do is have all of the teachers contracted and hired by the end of April, if possible. So that would be great. And then I just want to forecast some positions we're looking for. We're going to be looking for a more robust HR position that encompasses a few more roles, potentially hiring also an assistant principal in the near for the fall, and a resource specialist / behavioral specialist. So that's it for my update with respect to that. And expect to hear more in Tuesday's meeting.
Edward, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So did we get confirmation on the student enrollment for next year? Because I'm assuming that's driving.
Yeah, it is
future
driving.
enrollment, right?
Yeah, so that was the first step. The first step was getting that, and we have confirmation on that. That's been sent over to accounting. So now we'll be able to forecast the budget, which is, I guess that's an update that, thank you for asking that question. Forecast the budget, which is where we are now. And then we also, with respect to teachers, assignments. So which teachers are going to teach where, and with the new enrollment, we'll know how many new teachers we need,
Right.
and then where they're going to teach and what's, where the gaps are. And then that will sort of forecast who we need to hire, and then we can finalize the contracts. And we hope to have all that done by the end of April
Got it. Thank you.
for the teachers.
Edward, I have a question regarding this HR role. We've
Mhm.
this role was it was sorely needed.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was fulfilled only quite recently. How vital has this role been, and what has been needed from this individual or this role so far?
So this role, I think initially, charter schools are unique to where sometimes people wear a number of different hats. And I think initially this role was just going to be forecasted or at least advertised as their standard human resource specialist. But because of just, getting things on the right track, turning the school around, making a lot of progress, which we have done, and I'm very happy to announce that we've done, and things are looking much better. And that is a large part of that is because of our HR role and person that we have filling that role. So that person's duties, or at least the role right now, the duties for that role are quite large. They include a lot of things that your standard district affiliated HR would not be doing. But it's vital for now for us to have that role doing that, because it's very helpful in getting us in compliance in a number of issues. I mean, many issues, to make sure we're in compliance going forward, to make sure that we are, have a strong foundation as a beginning school. And the HR position and sort of the more robust expanded HR position has been vital for that. So really, without what's been going on with the robust expanded HR position, I think we're in a much better shape now because of the expansion of that role.
I have to ask one more question. How much of the role has been to really identify, review, and then also begin to modify, basically ensure that we are in compliance with all legal laws?
Well, I mean, basically the role right now is they're going through every compliance policy and procedure and finding the ones that we don't have, the ones that, or I shouldn't really say the ones we don't have, or the ones that aren't up to snuff, to put it in a more colloquial term, the ones that are lacking in any way, shape, or form, and working. And then the expanded HR role also works closely with our authorizer, OCBE, and OCDE as well, and making sure that everyone is satisfied with what is expected of a charter school. So I think that's probably the simplest way I can put that.
Edward, on that too, have you noticed a slice of that role being required to fulfill public information requests?
Yeah, yes. And of course, as a charter school, everything that we do is public. We're a public school, and we are more than happy to share any information that anyone within our community or outside our community is looking for. And right now that has been slated to the expanded HR role, which traditionally in districts, usually human resource specialists would not necessarily be the point person on that. But for us, that role has been the expanded, robust HR role has become the point person for that, and a number of other issues. Trying to think, I mean, OCBE is a big one. OCDE, I guess both of those is the big one. But yeah, the public information request, which would be could be quite expensive if we didn't have someone being able to do that role for us. I'm trying to think of some other things that are sort of outside the normal purview, or maybe I should say some of the other things that we have included to put under this sort of umbrella of human resource, expansion. Besides OCBE, OCDE, and public records, those are the first two that come to mind. Yeah. Contract review, compliance, policy procedures, development, a lot of things. And those things are the most important things for our school, to make sure that we are on the right track. So it's very important.
Wonderful. I think I completely agree with that. I think right now, a school is only as good as people. And crossing every T's, dotting every I's, and doing things the right way and the correct way is vital.
Yes, that's exactly.
Yeah.
And actually, I'll go back to what Glenn had asked about the enrollment. I just give a little bit clearer of the way it's laying out. So then after we know our enrollment now, and that's taken care of for next year. And then adding, the teachers in the right spots, rehiring teachers, hopefully by the end of this month. And then after that, I think we would begin to put out the advertisements or post the application, the jobs for any new positions that we feel that we're going to need for the fall. So doing the teachers first are the most important, and then after that, forecasting any new positions, for example, behavioral specialists or resource specialists or assistant principal or any of those. That would be something that would be on the agenda right after the teachers would be taken care of, which would be early May.
Wonderful. Yeah, the hiring process has been quite challenging this last year by having an HR director going through the process.
Yeah, and and that's more typical HR responsibilities, the onboarding process, but having someone who's knowledgeable in that role just makes it so much easier for everyone at the school. Yeah, something else I was going to say, but it kind of slipped out. But yeah. Oh, I was going to say, I think it's fairly, as far as, May, I think May is a fairly typical month to look for admin positions or any newly created positions we might have for the fall. So I don't think we're really behind the 8 ball on that as far as the hiring process is going, but it's just good that we have a strong human resource position right now in order to ensure all of that is in compliance.
Well, much appreciated. Actually, I did not realize that position has now expanded to fielding those public requests.
Yeah.
Which I've been collecting a few.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Wonderful. Yeah, the public request. Yeah, that has expanded to that too. Yeah.
That's quite good. Does anybody have any further questions for Dr. Watson?
So can I ask general questions? Do we need it to be finance related?
It will be steered a little bit more towards finance, but if there's 1 degree of separation, I'm sure it can be asked.
Okay, so just real quick, Edward, can we get you on the website, on the board of directors side, and I'll drop you a quick note on this. Can we get you off of there?
Oh, you know what?
That didn't happen. Also,
yeah. So the website has had the changes.
I saw the front page, but
the front page, yeah. And then my contact information is up there. We will be posting more about me, the current interim executive. That will be posted very shortly.
Okay.
But you know what? It totally sort of slipped my mind about me on the board of directors is also on there. I was thinking going through that, I was like, okay, no changes here. We're good. And I moved on.
Yes, if we can remove you. And did we get Michael's credit card back for purchasing? Yeah. And did we remove him from the banks?
Yeah, so his credit card is back, and that's finance related. Maybe it looks like Doug Houston wants to say something about this.
Just the answer to number 2. We've informed the bank in person. Dr. Watson and I went to Capital Bank
last week.
to complete the process, they have him with inability to use the bank account, but we all have to show up in person, do a little final change, but we're safe in that sense where we've fenced that off and then the credit card's been returned.
Fantastic.
We have a step to go.
And then Edward, if you can just do an intro video and get that posted to the front website for future
Yes,
recruitment.
yes, 100%, along
Thank
with
you.
my resumes, CV. Looks like Delano has a question. I don't know if this is for me, but I see a hand raised. No, your hand is just up, but no.
Oh, no, I do have a question. I was waiting on Ethan to acknowledge. If I could ask a question.
I feel like, yeah,
Don't
I'll
please.
step back.
Yeah. So it's related to the, and this is just more or less for clarity. Good afternoon, everyone. Excuse me. This is more for clarity for me. So with Dr. Scott being removed from the bank account, I just want to clarify that Doug Houston is still a signer and that Dr. Watson has or will shortly get signing privileges.
It's the latter. I'm still a signer. And then we have to add Edward Watson by being present. I believe it's actually Dr. Smith as well. So we're coordinating that. They may allow us to do this all with remote signatures.
Mhm.
She was checking on that, but yeah, we want to wrap that up very quickly and get a local signer on campus.
Okay, perfect. Just let me know when that happens. And for now, going forward, Doug, I will use your signature until Dr. Watson gets
That's
approved.
my understanding. Yeah.
And so this is effective as of last Friday. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Dr. Watson, does this affect all the other treasury services, credit cards? I know Delano provided a checklist, and I know everybody's been working expeditiously, but credit cards or any other I call treasury related instruments, has Dr. Scott been removed?
Yeah, gradually. I know the big thing was the bank, and Doug and I did that last week.
Okay.
And the credit card, which has also been taken care of. As far as the other smaller items, they're all taken care of as far as I'm aware, but we might have missed something.
And just, my last
Delano.
question is right now, I know right now you've been just getting a handle on the school situation. How are you starting to work with Athena and others on the next year's budget?
Yes, have started that. Athena has been very helpful with not only the finances, but with just turning the school around. And yeah, we have started, but and now that we've got the sort of the enrollment numbers for next year nailed down, we can really get going.
Delano, you have your hand raised.
Just a quick update on the other areas you mentioned regarding the treasury and things like that. Yes, he has been taking off of all of those. Those requests were sent, and Dr. Watson was copied on those. So he is, I believe the only other area I'm waiting to hear back from is the Public Charter Schools Grant Office in terms of now replacing Michael Scott with Ed Watson. So that's the last one that I'm aware of that has not been addressed.
Well, thank you so much. At this time, I'd like to move to the committee agenda, and there's no discussion, there's no action needed, but we can start. First item is the review and discussion of the March financials. Delano, I'd like to ask if you can provide some comments about it.
Absolutely, yes. Well, thank you, Mary Beth. I can share my screen. All right, awesome.
Can you do it, Delano?
I can't. I have just so many windows open. I'm trying to find it here. There we go. Can you guys see? I made the change over to the year-to-date financials. Can you guys see this, or is it still on the check register? You're good. Awesome.
Yeah, that's good. Can you just make it a teeny bit bigger?
Absolutely. Yes, Glenn, I will. Oops,
That-
not that big. How about that?
That's perfect. Good for me.
Give it even 150 there. There we go. All right, perfect. All right, so I'll sort of circle back up to the top where we left this conversation with Dr. Watson just a second ago. So we, since the transition, we've met on a number of occasions. Obviously, there's a lot to get up to speed on, right? And so, there's some of this has been a slow walk to a large degree, but he's a quick learner and study, and I think he's gotten up to speed in terms of his level of understanding of a lot of the moving parts within the IIA entity. One of the things that we've really touched on quite a bit in our last few meetings was, the current status of this year's budget and actuals, and then obviously the budget for next year as well. And they did send the enrollment, as he mentioned, I believe a few days ago, so we can really now lock in on that budget for the next finance committee meeting, which will be in May, and then we'll bring that same budget to the board. So there's lots of work to be done, but this ties in with a number of other things as well, because it's not just the budget, a standalone budget. Obviously, you have your LCAP. That document really needs to speak truth to the budget, right? And so there is that tie-in that must happen there. And so there will be some time where that, we'll need to allocate some time to do that as well. And there are a couple of other documents as well. The parent or stakeholder portion of that we have to produce and things like that. So there are a couple of documents that we will tie in with that budget. Obviously, the LCAP, as I mentioned, being the biggest one. And I do want to talk about the ESSER, the potential for the ESSER 3 funding, but we'll set that aside for now. But let's talk about what we're looking at here for March. Year to date, and again, as I've always stated, the biggest portion of your revenues, your LCFF portion, which is your state aid, which is very small, the EPA, which is even smaller, and then obviously the biggest portion because of your location here in Irvine, that get a boatload of it is from your property taxes. 399,000 federal, and again, all of that is really from the PCSGP grant. And there was a small amount, I'll digress a little bit here. The last month, your SELPA, you belong to, I believe, Los Angeles County SELPA, and they had some excess federal dollars, and they actually allocated, it was less than 2,000, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was allocated to the school. But just wanted to point that out as well. And again, not much in state revenues. You guys are really now just coming into the pipeline to, and I don't believe you'll even get any. We'll have to accrue most of this, your lottery revenues, things like that. But you will get you will now get your state special ed revenues too, which I believe you started getting that. I believe I saw that come in early April, if I'm not mistaken. And then again here, the majority of this local revenues from the after school program and all those various portions of it. Total revenues 3.2 million. Our budget calls for 3.199 at the end of March. You can see where we stack up against that. Again, roughly about 1.2 million remaining in our budget to go. On the expenditure side, and again, we did make that huge change to the budget back a few months ago, and you can kind of see where this is shaking out here a little bit. A lot better than it was in terms of now, we have actuals that really reflect or the budget reflects those actual as well in terms of, being much more in line. You can see that play out here. Again, here I'll highlight this. And I think, we understand where some of this, some contracted services, legal services, things like that, that are, really on the uptick, if you will. But again, you can see here, and again, I project now, if I reforecast this at some point in April, I can already tell you that, we'll probably blow through that $99,000 between now and May. Just because I know what's coming down the pipe with some other things that have happened, things like that. But again, a lot better than, again, I'm not looking for perfection. I know the board and this committee is not looking for perfection. We're looking for, true and correct information, and also make sure that, this gives you enough ammunition to make decisions. You can see into what's going on. And again, we can always dive in between these lines if the need arises. I tend not to do that at this level. I usually do that with Dr. Watson and his counterparts in terms of being a lot more in the weeds. You guys do have the check register. I do send you a couple of other documents in terms of the restricted funds and things like that in a much more vertical view that you guys can see offline if there are questions to that. But for the purpose of this meeting, I sort of keep it at 10 to 20,000 feet, etc. Again, here, other outgo, most of this related to your borrowing from Charter Schools Capital. Total expenses of 3.1 million. We're right about there, about 51,000 under. Our net income for the month, this is in terms of our budget, is where I thought you would be, about 51,000 under. You're actually about 58,000 positive. And again, I always go back to this as being kind of that indicator as to why, to a large degree. But we're 58,808 positive through the end of March. You can see our ending cash here at the end of March, $569,962. Again, on these charts over here, they basically just show you just, in a pie presentation here, just the various slices of the pie in terms of expenditures, things like that. Feel free to interrupt if there are questions. Otherwise, I'll just proceed down to the balance sheet.
I have a question, Delano.
Yes, sir.
Has the other irrevocable grants, have they been about 2 months ago we talked about the time frame. So one of the grants was the K Family Foundation. They tightened up the language so that you and the administration knows how to account for it. Has the Larry and Helen Hogue Foundation, have they clarified their position on?
Not that I'm aware, and we probably want to circle this back to Dr. Watson for him to sort of, spearhead that. I think internally he may have, some flexibility with those resources, but I really want to put that back on him to get up to speed on what occurred with that. In terms of the actual expenses that we currently have, and then obviously the go forward in terms of how those resources can be further spent or allocated. So I'll put that on something for us to discuss the next time we meet.
Delano, I got a question too.
Yes.
With our federal income that we receive, a large part is our grant. How much of that grant, which I believe is a multi-year 600,000, how much have we allocated or used for reimbursements this year? And are we leaving any money on the table if we don't use it all this year? Or will, what are the chunks? Can we only use 300 or 200? What's your advice on that?
So we right now I'll say roughly 300 and let's just say 95,000 or so of this is related to the PCSGP grant. And if you guys want to spot check that, just check on that resource funding document. You'll see the PCSGP and you'll be able to see the detail there. Roughly 395,000 or so is that. That's all we have budgeted for this year. The remaining 200,000 will come out in next fiscal year.
Okay,
We
yeah.
have about a 3-year window on that. There isn't a, if we overspend it or if there's some change to the budget in terms of what we've spent, then obviously that requires us to revise that budget. There is some flexibility with that with the state. They're not, we're not hard and fast on locked in that way. But that is also something, and Dr. Watson, if you can put that down as another item for us to address, is to look at that budget to make sure that, and thank you, Doug, for bringing that up. It just reminded me of something. We'll look at that and make sure that, programmatically around the school, that we're still on track with that, right? Because it's one of those things where you just don't want it to, sit in the corner and simmer by itself. So we'll check back in with it. I'm coming up on the next reporting cycle for it. There was not much activity. I've obviously, in the last couple of months, because like I said, a boatload of that occurred in the early stages of the school year. So I don't anticipate a lot more this year, but as we get into the early parts of next year, we'll definitely go ahead and expense the remainder of that, because we're pretty doggone close now.
Great.
All righty. So
Delano, I
John-
do have another question. I'm
Yes.
comparing the March, the March to the February.
Mhm.
The budget remaining for on the last column. Right now, there's a net income around $81,000. How confident are we that we're not going to exceed that number? Or
Are
that
you talking
number will
about-
not continue decreasing?
Mhm. So if you look at that column that says 21-22 budget, that
Mhm.
one, yeah. So that you see that 139, that's the target, right? So that's where we're focused,
That's
right?
right.
So that is where we want to be at 6:30 when we close the books.
Got it. Yes.
Yeah.
Based
So
upon
that
the
is-
second interim budget. I
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah, so that's where we are. We're looking good. And again, part of this, there's really isn't a there's no baseline for this school, right? So there's no history that I can look back and say, oh yeah, with confidence, right? But based on what we've projected and forecasted, we think that you guys will be right about there, if not a little bit higher. But again, I say that, if we stick to this plan, right, to this budget plan, but obviously, things come up and things have happened already that will cause a little bit of turbulence with that. But one thing that for sure is that we won't finish with the deficit.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
So just kind of looking at the balance sheet again, as I mentioned, roughly 580,000 or so in cash here. Another 17,000 remaining in some prepaid expenditures. Again, your total assets of 587,689. You can see the liabilities broken out here. Most of that payables in terms of salaries and other accrued liabilities. 80,000 left remaining to charter schools capital. I know that's going to be a discussion point at some point here, but again, just wanted to point that out. That's the remaining balance that we have for them. Again, the $250,000 revolving loan. We won't begin making payments on this until next fiscal year, I believe, sometime in the fall. We'll start to make payments on that. So you'll start to see that balance reduce down during that time. And again, here, this one portion of revenues that you guys receive that we have not yet recorded as revenues because you have no expenses related to it. So that's the reason why I say. And as we go through the year, we'll expense more of it. And we have been doing that, so we can track that down some. Again, subtracting here our restricted and other restatements puts us at, again, here, this $24,000. This is just a fund balance as of March 30th, this deficit, 24,000. So that's where we are through March. Again, I think we all understand, the potential for this school and the power that it has, and when you use that the right way, obviously, a lot of great things can happen, and we certainly have seen that, this year in so many ways. Even besides some of the the things that have sort of taken us off course a little bit, but really happy with what, financially, how things have gone, considering this is your first year and those first year struggles are all too real at times, right? But I think for the most part, the resources that were provided were used in the most beneficial way, I want to say. And again, I may be speaking out of turn because I don't know all things, but I think for the most part, the students received, there wasn't a want or a need that was not met in that regard, as far as I'm aware. So, all righty. So that's the March financials. If you guys want, feel free to look at the check register. If you guys want me to share that, I certainly can do that. If there's no need to, I won't.
I went through it, looks pretty, nothing out
Awesome.
of the ordinary. There was a
And so I'll touch on a couple of things before I turn it back over to you really quick, just in terms of planning. So as I mentioned, Dr. Watson and I have been meeting weekly since the transition. We'll continue to do that to work on the budget. We'll then start, now obviously we're going to start to layer this quite a bit. Those meetings will now take on a much more, Edward, don't take this the wrong way, much more meaningful type of conversation, right? In terms of some actions and activities that we'll be doing in terms of budget prep and things like that. Obviously, Stephen will be a critical part of that and a key role in that. This time of the year, just again, as a frame of reference, is an extremely busy time, right? Dr. Watson laid out already a number of things that he has going that needs to get buttoned up between now and June. Obviously, a great majority of that will come back to the board or to this body for some type of discussion and approval. And then again, working with Stephen on the LCAP, and obviously there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that regard, getting the stakeholders, input and things like that, and then obviously layering the budget with all of the goals and actions there. So there's a lot of work to be done between now and then, and the June meeting, but I'm confident that we'll get it done. That that is what we're required to do, so we'll be able to do that. That's all I have. I'll be happy to take any other questions if you have related to the March financials.
Probably a great time to invite any parent and public questions too for Delano, because we're not taking action, but they're certainly part of the discussion. So if you're open to that, Ethan, we could invite Q&A with Delano as well. It's a subcommittee meeting. It's a little different formality than the monthly meeting, but there may be some clarification that would be really helpful for parents, or even just comments as they've now heard the board observations on the budget. Are you open to that?
I am. So like this time, just like to ask, this is a very unusual process, but I'd like to open up for any public comments or questions. And if you can, unmute yourself and feel free to ask a question.
Hi, this is Donna. I had a quick question on where I can find those documents online. I can't find the March register, as well as the documents that you guys were referring to.
Great question. Mary Beth, can you, should be on the
Yes.
website.
So Donna, when you go to the website,
Okay,
where it says school board, you could
Yeah.
click on it. And
you mean under About Us?
no, it's one of the icons.
Oh,
So
I see.
school board.
Okay,
If you click on it, it'll take you to a line that says click here for school board meetings.
oh wow, that was it's like really tucked in there, guys. But I still don't see, this page that it goes to, it's the same page that it points to when I go to the bottom under, I think it's like supporting documents or accountability or something, but I still don't see the March and
Oh,
the
so
March register.
Go to the
And I-
finance committee meeting. If you go to a finance committee meeting under, inside the folder where it says 4/13/22, because there are several finance committee meeting folders. So the
Okay,
one that says finance committee 4/13/22, it's right in that folder.
got it. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
May I suggest that everything is consistent, since it looks like check registers are on the left hand at the bottom of the homepage. Check register, July, August, September, it has all of them up through February, so there's no reason for me to think it would be anywhere else. And also all the documents for each meeting, if it would be consistently part of the agenda or a link to it, that would make things a lot more organized.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Donna, if I can respond back to that question, that's an excellent observation. I know your frustration is shared by many people, including the board.
Including the board.
It's
Yeah, we are
no,
working on the website, and we're taking care of the website. We understand the website is many people, not just parents, not just the board. Many people have expressed their frustrations. We've already made some changes that hopefully will help make things better, but there's going to be some more drastic changes in the near future to the website.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you. It's one thing for it to be clunky. It's another thing for it just to be disorganized. Like this month is here and next month it's here. Like you have to, it's tucked away and it's really difficult to find. But thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate you guys understanding it.
It's a work in progress.
I understand.
Thank
Thank you.
would anybody else like to make a comment or ask questions directly to Delano or to the finance committee on the March financials? Okay, we can move on to the next subject, which is a discussion regarding an outstanding loan, $79,900 from Charter School Capital. Delon, can you share some details about it?
Yes, I believe I may have shared with you, Ethan, just the schedule, the last summary report from that. I
Yep.
don't have it. I'll have to find it, but if you needed to
I have it. Thank you.
pull it here, we can. So the remaining outstanding balance is 79,900, I believe. So that will be paid out of your April property tax payment that you will receive around the 15th of this month. So that will get sent. The process is obviously the check is cut by Irvine Unified. It gets sent to Charter Schools Capital, who will then deduct their portion and then wire back the remainder of it. I'm estimating that you'll get roughly about 219,000 or so back from that. So, and that should show up probably sometime next week, right? The question then becomes, and this is something that obviously, you know, we will need to discuss, is any future borrowing, right? You know, it's one thing that I've always mentioned to the board and especially to the finance committee is the need to be mindful of that, you know, amount of borrowing on a long-term basis. For a short-term basis, it's fine because, you know, there's a necessary evil there in terms of having enough resources to get the school off the ground and things like that in the early months and even really the early years. And I don't want to gloss over that, say the early months, because really and truly, it takes you about a good 2 years to sort of get stabilized in a way. Fortunately for you guys, you had additional resources that you were able to bring to the table. So that mitigated, you know, a long period of borrowing from them. And if I can help it to a large degree, and obviously there's some, you know, some issues here with, you know, anticipating certain things coming to fruition. But our next round of borrowing from them will probably be sometime in May. You know, but I want to make sure that we have a conversation around that before we do that, you know, just so we can sort of take a look at the numbers, because there is some planning for next year that needs to happen now. within the next couple of months. Obviously to get ready for, I believe you're adding an additional, help me here, Dr. Watson, 110 new students somewhere in there. I can't remember the exact number, but there's some things that we have to plan for now. And it's going to require some additional resources to do that. So we'll talk about what that may look like. And again, the ultimate goal here is, there's always a sweet spot with this wherein, you don't want to be hooked up to this type of borrowing or this type of activity for a long period of time. The longer you're sort of engaged with this, the much more harder it is to wean yourself off of it. And so we'll, I sort of talk about it in that way, but it's a glorified payday loan in a sense, right? In so many ways, to be quite frank. But so we have to be mindful of that. We don't necessarily want to engage in a lot of that. While it's a necessary evil, I shouldn't say evil, but it's a necessity, right? And it's the only resource that we actually have that we can tap into. Charters don't have the luxury of some of the other public resources that school districts can tap into in terms of anticipated notes and things like that. So this is the way. But I will bring that back. In fact, they for clarity here, they did reach out today, and I did say, hey, let's check back in a couple more weeks. Once we get things a little bit more settled here, get Dr. Watson up to speed. And then obviously I'll loop at least one member, in Ethan, that will probably fall to you. I'll loop you back into that conversation when we get ready to have it. So, but for now, the outstanding balance is $79,000. That should come off of the balance sheet when we make this payment in April. And then obviously I'll update you all going forward in terms of what other additional resources are needed.
So
Yes.
Delano, that's the conversation about cash flow. And the question is, should we continue to receive the funding that's available to us, even though it's a low interest loan, and in some months maybe forego it because our cash position's strong enough?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And that's what we have done.
And we're close to that decision to say to charter
Schools.
capital, hey, hold back, we don't need another disbursement. Okay.
Yeah, we have been doing that. If you recall, Doug, back in June or July, whenever that initial, it seems like a long time ago. We still have that same borrowing. That's the agreement that's in place, and so we've just been borrowing off of that. Right. And so now we've paid everything back, and, with the exception of the $79,000. And so then that will come that bigger conversation, which is why I said I want to have that conversation with Ethan and Dr. Watson at some point to sort of take a look at what the needs will be for early in next year, because we'll have to have the resources to pull the trigger on those things. So
thank you. Because that kind of analysis from you is very helpful. As Peter, Dr. Watson, Ethan, and I look at that, and with your advice too, based on when our first funding will come, significant funding for next year, based on our increased attendance and enrollment, we can measure how often we may need that, or if we need it at all. So thank you for raising that up.
I do have one question. I understand that some of you have some hard stops. Who has a hard stop from the different members? Dr. Watson, I believe you have one.
I do.
Okay, 2:40.
Yeah, in about 4 or 5 minutes. So
Glenn, Peter, Doug?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
All right, I had to bounce soon too. I'm about to
Okay.
take off. Thank you.
Well, this borrowing has been, definitely been something. It's not just a concern for the school. It's one of my things I've always watched out for, because you are borrowing money, which means you have to pay it back beyond just the interest. Please go ahead.
I do have a
Let's go.
question for Dinano.
Up.
Hey, Dinano. So when the new school year begins, my understanding is that the money doesn't come in immediately, right? Usually we get the money for first, quarter in late October and November. Is that correct? You're muted.
Sorry, set him off over there. So what we'll do, and let me back up and answer it this way, Stephen. So the funding cycle that you guys were on this year is not really the true funding cycle, going forward, because in your first year it's a little bit different, but in your second year and onwards, it's more consistent in terms of the percentages and things like that. What I was alluding to, and Stephen, I'm going to digress a little bit. What I was alluding to, so you guys are going to have 100 additional students, right? So there's going to be some investment up front in terms of things that you will need to purchase, right? And so if we wait until, as we get into, say, August or September to do that, you will have missed out on probably the best deals, or you will have, you may not even get it, right? Because schools are always in that sort of window where it's, hey, we have to get it now or order it early so that way we can get it in time for school. And with, things being as slow as they have been, just in terms of, I think we've all, sort of, a little bit forgotten that COVID sort of impacted us in a way that even basic things that we, would normally order and expect to receive in a reasonable amount of time are taking a little bit longer. So the barring any of all that coming to fruition, obviously we want to, make sure that we're ahead of the game. So that's the reason why I'm pushing on, hey, look, at some point we're going to have that discussion about future borrowing, because if we need the capital to make those purchases or pull the trigger on it, right? But what we will probably do, and again, I don't want to sort of have a deep dive into this right here, because we still haven't really vetted all of this. We'll go back to the table of charter schools capital. We'll look at the enrollment holistically. We'll look at, the number of students we anticipate, new students next year. Obviously, they will want to purchase a portion of that. And again, they never purchase 100% of anything. It's usually 75 to 80% of a thing, right? So it's either your in lieu of property tax for March or December, whatever the case may be, 75 to 80% of that, a portion of your EPA or some other funding, right? So yes, Stephen, the funding cycle will be different because, you will anticipate getting revenues in August, as opposed to, this year where you didn't receive any revenues until, I believe your first portion came in October or somewhere in there. So it'll be a much more consistent funding, but again, still, the need for that cash up front in those early parts of the fiscal year, talking July and August, when you guys really need to be able to have, cash on hand to do things to get prepared for September or August opening. I hope that answers your question.
Stephen, does that answer your question?
Yeah, because during our first year, we didn't have the money. That's why we borrowed the money to make sure we can pay our staff. So that was my question to see if we are going through the same cycle. If not, that's good. So we feel more comfortable to hire more staff that we need for next school year.
So let me add, Delano, let me add some more color. So right now, to add on to what you're saying, Delano, and also Stephen as well, is to during this first year, as I looked through every single month's financials, there was unexpected expenses. As I understand, there's some conversation. There's a running tab in the internal running tab of additional expenses that various stakeholders have requested to add for. Well, clearly they wanted this year or last month. I said probably not, but definitely those need to be considered. Those will be handed over to the administration for their consideration. I understand there was conversation about books, possibly. So that again surrounds our curriculum. There's more Chromebooks. Also, a very big component, which still needs to be addressed, is how does the after-school program get addressed? Again, I've actually written to a few parents, transparently saying those funds are actually considered unrestricted. The question is, should they be So legally they're unrestricted, but should those be considered an internal policy going forward, which then will affect how the financials are moving. And so that each and every single line item has some teeth to it. Unlike, as you know, there's history, there's track record. Right now, there's Dr. Watson, I don't envy you. You are in the day-to-day weeds. You know, I'm there right behind you, not sat next to you, but right behind you to watch out and put safeguards as you're considering different budgets. Because there's still some big moving parts in order to compose that budget. I am right now I want to ensure that the school has a sufficient amount of cash. It's not 1 month of working capital. It's not 2 months. A little bit more is a little bit healthier, which of course, unfortunately, so we're exploring different funding options. And of course, we're also trying to actively also explore additional local resources, such as grants, private grants, whether it be from other family foundation institutions, and more importantly, also the PTO. So, but absolutely, you are correct, Stephen. Having the sufficient amount of cash to make sure the human resources address is vital. If there's two things in life, it's one, I pay the right amount on the agreed upon date. That's always been one of my principles. Never beyond that. Glenn, do you have any further questions? I mean, this is segued into discussion item number 2 and number 3, but do you have any questions for that before I open up for further?
Nope, I'm good.
Doug? At this time, I'd like to open up for any public comments or questions for Delano, myself, and other finance committee members. Okay, looks like there are no comments, public comments surrounding this. I definitely encourage everybody to, participate in the May's Finance Committee meeting, which should be as on a regular scheduled time and date, as will be, hopefully the administration will be having the a proposed draft for next year's budget. At this time, I'd like to, move to the next item. Any committee recommendations? Glenn, Doug?
Oh, you have mine, thanks.
I'm good too. Thank you. It's good interactivity today.
Stephen, please.
This is the request from our classroom aide. They think their current hourly rate, $16, is below the market. So with the increase of the cost of living and everywhere, so I would like to request the finance committee to consider to have a raise for the hourly rate for the classroom aides, because I think their concern is legit. Because we are paying the after school program staff, the classroom aide $20, but for our regular program we're paying $16. So I see the argument. It's being valid.
Even are the skills that they're doing in after school different than the skills they're doing in the classroom?
No, this is classroom aide.
Right, 8, okay.
Actually, Glenn, I'm actually, I'm aware of it, Stephen. You are absolutely correct. And correct on what? Requesting to normalize the pay, the transparency, and to normalize, because actually from my understanding, the school aides, school hour aides are frankly doing a lot more. Oh no, I should not say. I don't want to pit this between after school and school hours, but the level of responsibilities. It's a little bit unfortunate. There's been the policy and procedures and the precedent was not managed during this first year, it's a tragedy. It is the response will be, yes, they will be, because it's all under IIA. During school hours, Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 3, Monday after school hours, Monday through Friday would be, let's assume, 2:30 to 6. It's all under IIA. It is very, generally speaking, very difficult for the numbers to go down. It can only go up. So Steve, that's a very good question, because now that ties back to the amount of funding we needed as well. I personally would have liked it to be enacted much sooner, but I was also looking at the financial scene where we're going to be landing. I also realize right now that because, as Dr. Watson just said earlier, contracts are needing to be, employment contracts needs to be signed. So we need to deliver on not only an amount, but by when. Again, sooner the later, but that also comes around about the amount that needs to be possibly be borrowed. So we can give a yes, we're going to pay, and there will be no impact to the human resources in the long term. It's quite tragic. There's been two, even under the one roof, there are two different groups.
So Ethan, so I'm trying to summarize. Are we going to normalize the pay between both for next year? Is that what you're trying to get to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So
but
for the remainder
I have a more fundamental question. Is even $20 or whatever dollar amount, is it even what is the dollar amount? So right now we hear $20 and we hear $16. Okay, well, just bring everybody 20. The question is, I'm not saying should it be lower or higher, but why is that? And what responsibilities are they doing?
My recommendation is we have our HR person do a salary comparison out there, right? Yeah. From other charter schools in our neighborhood area and public schools, and figure out what is the right amount, right?
Yeah.
So for the remainder of this year, it's going to stay as is, correct?
No.
That's what I'm trying to say. Right? I didn't hear a clear response. That's why I wanted to get.
Right now, it also comes about, Glenn, also great question, Stephen, it also comes about, I'm looking at our cash flow.
Yeah.
Because our working capital, we need to have more than just about 2 months of working capital in the bank. So the question is, I hear other expenses had to be just straight up nixed, just absolutely undeniably cannot be paid.
Correct.
I understand there's been discussion from the PTO about the pay for the aides, and that's a very remaining generous gift that the PTO has continued to offer. But what does that translate to, not only the remainder for this year, but as a precedent for following year? Because we do not want to put undue pressure on the PTO to continue to be forced to fundraise and be forced to be obligated to pay for what should be a school operation expense. For them just to provide from some seed, initial capital is very gracious, but not for ongoing
operations. I agree with you. So you're saying right now we do not have the cash flow to go from $16 to $20 an hour for the remainder of the year.
For how many aides? I believe with 12.
We have 10 right now.
10.
Right, Mary Beth?
Yes.
Yeah, 10. Yeah.
So once we get better indication of what hence the next year's the draft for the next year's budget, we can say, okay, with a little bit more certainty, we can do the increase up to whatever particular dollar amount may be, effective immediately. So more importantly, to retain staff.
Okay, but for Stephen to get back to the aides, it sounds like it's not happening this year, correct?
Can I say we are in the process of discussion, and we'll have more detail, the answer after the board meeting or something? Or no? Should I just tell them not going to happen this year?
For all transparency, right now the very key thing is regarding around the next year's budget. That's key. I have to be able to see that. I need to be understand so that I'm not putting the school in jeopardy of, oh, well, let's spend all this year. Hey, you know what? It'll be somebody else's problem next year, because for whatever reason, I just don't want to leave the school hanging for any particular reason. I want to make sure. So as soon as I'm hoping, as if I can get better understanding, which of what the budget is like for next year, given the enrollment, how, if and when different revenue sources, local, whether the after school program, there could be some revenue changes, financial changes. I mean, this year,
Here is my understanding, because we had PTO board meeting last night. So during the board meeting, PTO board members, they were having a discussion regarding the $23,000 they offered our school to pay for the classroom aids. But their concern was that they were under the impression that the school did not have the money. But later there was lots of confusions that the school actually had the money to pay this, and that. So that's why they were wondering if the school can return the money if originally the school had the budget to pay for the classroom aids. So here's my suggestion. If later we did find that we did have the money originally and maybe would want to return the $23,000, maybe we can ask PTO to help us to pay for that salary increase that our current classroom aides are asking. So I think that would be a better solution for both sides, because the purpose of PTO fund is to support the school, and we do want to support our working staff who are working hard for like really low hourly rate. So that's my thought, my suggestion.
Nice suggestion. We already resolved that question though with the PTO's request for return of money and see it differently. We don't see that we had the money. So we received their money. We received extra money, which allowed us to fully fund all of the things. So it's a little different in the viewpoint of what happened. But I do like PTO's participation. However, we never want to be dependent upon them going into a new budget. So I think for sure you acknowledge that the committee here understands the pressure on anybody earning $16 an hour and the disparity with an afternoon teacher, which may have different qualifications.
They're not teachers, they're all classroom aides.
I'm sorry, classroom aides. Oh, classroom aides, afternoon, classroom aides in the morning.
Yes.
So we see that disparity and would like to make it up. Disparities don't feel good to us either. And the issue is, we believe we can solve it for next year because we're plenty of time going in. The inflation rate at 7.5% to 8% is concerning, I think, for everybody, especially those with literally a $16 an hour wage. So I don't know that we can resolve it in this meeting, but we can certainly reflect back through you that we know it's a problem. How we can address it, I think with PTO sitting with nearly $40,000 sitting in their bank account, they could decide whether that's a good use of the money. And if we could forecast out what that would be, it's a possibility. I don't see why we couldn't change the wage of a class of employees to finish the year well, to retain them. Boy, I think about that person could earn more at In-N-Out Burger. Now I think they have a calling to education, but wow, it's a precarious position for us to have somebody earning a wage so low that is involved in something so important. So
yeah.
Ethan, any other thoughts on that? But I would say with our budget the way it is, we're tight, but it's a problem we're solving. It's just how.
Yeah. Stephen, please go ahead.
Okay, so from what I just heard, that $23,000 won't return to PTO. And then there's a second part that PTO agreed to also transfer the money to support a classroom aid. So maybe the second part can be the one to support the salary increase for our daytime classroom aide, if that's okay.
You know, like all contributions, we ultimately ratify those with a board acceptance. So I could see us bringing that as a finance committee to a board if this committee thought, oh, that's worth bringing true, but we'd have to be clear on the offer. And if it makes that worthy of board discussion for sure. I love that you're looking out for the organization and the employees simultaneously. You've raised a really important issue. So if we could do that, it's not agendized for today, but it could be agendized for Tuesday's meeting for board discussion.
Yeah, since this is about money, because during the PTO meeting, they do say that at the end of the school year, they don't want to have too much money left in the bank, because that's not the purpose of parents' donation, right? They want the money to be spent at our school for each school year, which makes sense. That's why I think from my experience that it would be better if we do that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. You know, there's been a lot of moving parts, very big moving parts. I'm trying to make sure where the school it's being set for a success financially. At this time, is there any other, Glenn, do you have any further questions? Or maybe does any other public comments like to tag along or add on to what we are discussing now? I'd like to open up. Okay, at this time, I'd like to adjourn today's Finance Committee meeting. Who would like to motion? Glenn?
Ethan, Glenn?
Ethan seconds. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Glenn?
Yes.
Doug? Peter had to drop off at around 2:48 p.m. So he abstained. And Ethan K says aye. Okay, today's Finance Committee meeting has been adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks, folks. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.